What's the worst gambling addiction story you've heard? An employee at my dad's company was a lovely guy but addicted to gambling. He retired after 25 years at the company. The newish at the time casino in the city immediately got him to join into high roller games. He burnt through all of his retirement savings in 3 months and took his own life. Next story. Buddy used to work in the kitchen at a casino. He was put on the buffet floor for breakfast. Some lady comes up to him and asks if he can bag up some of the bread because she gambled everything overnight and had no food to make her kids a lunch for school. He gave her some bread and a gambling support hotline card. She complained and he got suspended. Casinos. A wonderful place where doing the right thing will often get you in trouble as an employee. I know that I could never work in such a morally depraved place. Just ain't right, man. Next story. Classmate and his brother suddenly received a letter from the government that it was time to start paying back their student debt. This was odd. They never took out student loans. It turned out their mother had them sign documents when they turned 18 and collected their student loans in her bank account to gamble with. Same for the family savings. She was in charge of all the finances in the house. The father also completely trusted her with his paycheck and apparently never checked the bank account. When the brothers confronted their mother, she apparently got up from her chair, said, "Well, the jig is up," left the house, and never talked to her family again. Next story. My parents' lifelong friend ended up winning about 1.2 million or so from a casino. He gambled all of it away and ended up worse than where he started. He blew his brains out in his basement when his wife left to go to a church function instead of coming clean to her that it was all gone. She would have rather had him than the money, though. Next story. I lived with a gambling addict, and the last day living together at his worst moment, he drove over to the Windsor casinos. We're from Detroit, and lost everything. Then, drunk, was shouting on the street, "Canadian people are cowards. You wouldn't be anything without the US." And a group of Canadian guys came over and busted his face open. The border agents let him cruise back to the US drunk with no teeth and mangled face. Fast forward to today. My good friend is addicted to online gambling and has wasted 5 years of his life clicking 4 tables on his phone simultaneously for 12 to 18 hours at a time, really believing it will be his future. Any money he gets is put into online gambling and he grinds it down to zero until he's infused again. It's insane witnessing it and nothing can stop it. I think it's because of a head injury he sustained in a bad car wreck right before the addiction manifested. Next story. My cousin had it pretty rough. Grew up poor alongside us. Started doing H at 17, which was already a gamble in itself. He would occasionally buy scratch-off tickets when he had money and would buy 40 ounces with them. He hit around 500 to 750 back in 2017, bought a bunch of dope booze, and found out about sport betting. He hit pretty big on sports bets, came into a lot of money that would be thrown away at dope. He did end up getting sober, which was awesome, but he never tackled the gambling. 2018, he kept it up, won real big for himself, around 15,000. Got a phone call in May from my mom telling me my cousin had passed away and what the arrangements were. He decided to do a shot of dope to celebrate a huge win he posted on Facebook about. That relapse cost him his life over some money he came into. Unfortunately, a relapse probably would have happened anyway, as a recovering addict myself. The money isn't an excuse, but I do know that dopamine is really dangerous. Next story. My first job was as a video poker attendant. This guy would come in and blow thousands of dollars in order to hit the jackpot, which would usually leave him breaking even, and then immediately pump it all back into the same machine. Thousands every week. The last time was a bit over 10,000. He was so furious he did not come back. He was doing it to himself, though. We ended up having to put Gamblers Anonymous stickers on all of the machines because of him. I have tons of stories, but another one that sticks out is a woman that would pee in the small trash can next to her machine when no one was around because she didn't trust us to hold her machine. Disgusting. OP, you should be thankful it was just number 1. That first guy, though, I don't know what video poker is. It's pretty much a slot machine, right? It's not actually poker, or maybe it is, and I just don't know how it works. Either way, thousands every week is insane. I can't imagine walking into a casino, blowing multiple thousands of dollars, and walking out with nothing. Like, surely that money could have been better spent to have the same level of excitement somewhere else. But hey, But hey, it's not called an addiction because you can kick it easily, I guess. Next story. There's tons of horrible stories, but the one that happened with someone I knew was a friend's mom. She was the manager at a convenience store, and she got down on her luck bad enough that she thought it would be a good idea to steal entire rolls of scratch-off tickets, hoping there would be enough to cover the cost of the roll and then some. Eventually, she got caught during an audit, and the district manager had her arrested in the middle of lunch rush in front of everyone. Next story. I knew a guy that won a large settlement for a workers' compensation settlement. He sold everything and sent his wife and children to Mexico. His wife's family was from there, and he was going to go to Vegas to start a hot dog stand or something. I was young and figured I'd just go with him and get a job there or take a bus back home. I didn't gamble, so I just played penny slots and drank free beer. After a week, he came back to the room one day and asked if he could have some privacy because he had to call his wife. Turns out he blew all the settlement money and everything else. Didn't even have any money left to pay for tickets for his family to come back to the States. He tried getting a job and an apartment in Vegas, but I hopped on the next Greyhound bus and never heard from him again. I often wonder what happened to him and his family. Next story. I used to work at a bar that had 15 Keno machines against the wall in various places. From opening to close, 8 a.m. to 2 a.m., there would be someone on at least one of those machines, mostly seniors. But there was this one lady who would blow her whole social security check the day she got it every time. Hearing her story, she was convinced she could win it big. The most you could win on those machines was either $600 or $800, I can't remember. But it's a state gambling regulation thing. So she dumps all her money into these machines trying to win $600. One day she comes to the counter so happy. She won $200. Oh good, I get to eat this month. And it's just like, you could eat every month if you wouldn't put your freaking check into these damn machines. According to the owner of the bar, those 15 machines paid for everything in the bar. Paid for electric, taxes, licenses, inventory, salary for employees, etc. So all liquor, beer, food, sales, etc. were pure profit after collecting the gambling money each week. I think if I owned a business and I knew that this would work, I still couldn't do it, which, hey, might be why I can't run a business, but it just feels so gross to me. Like, you're inviting the worst energy in the world into your establishment. The only way that pays for all of that is if you are sucking people's lives away. It's just not worth the buck to me. Next story. My dad's friend John. He always gambled in whatever way he could, from scratchers at the county fair to the casino. They struggled with money for so long because of it. Unfortunately, he hit it big one time. He walked away with $750K. During the next 5 years, he quit his job, bought 3 work trucks, bought a new house, took a ton of vacations, bought 2 boats, etc., etc. Frivolous spending. 5 years and he's broke, filing for bankruptcy because he kept gambling it away. They once again struggle with money. Next story. My dad works as an electrician. One day he was tasked with upgrading a panel in a woman's house. After the job was done, he got to talking to her, and I guess her husband had just passed away. Long story short, he had gambled away their entire retirement savings, the entire value of their house, and left her broke with nothing to fall back on. The bank was foreclosing on her house and allowed her to live there until they got it back up to snuff to sell it. She had to come out of retirement to work a menial job to put food on her table. Next story. That I personally know. He was a good friend at the time. Had it all. A solid job in a good paying field, a beautiful girlfriend, a solid circle of friends. We were all in our late 20s and early 30s. Well, he had a gambling addiction and he ran out of money. At home with his girlfriend, he took care of all the bills and expenses. She just contributed an amount to a joint account, I guess. He worked in the financial world, so he knew best, right? Well, ran out of money, so he started to skim money on very large transactions at work, banking. Figured, no one would miss a few $100 on a 7-figure transaction. Did for a while. In case you don't know, when a single digit is off at a bank, it can trigger some pretty intense investigations. It did not take long for them to figure out the pattern. He was fired and charged with grand theft since it was over $10K or something like that. Him and his girlfriend had a big trip planned to Europe, which she paid for. They went, and she found it funny when a couple of times he tried to use his credit card, but it was declined. It was sold off as them being abroad, and it might have been automatically locked. Everything prior to this, no one knew what kind of trouble he was in or anything of the situation. Not long after they got back, she found a letter from the landlord flagging they owe like 3 months of rent. She went down to the office herself to see what was going on, and they confirmed they were 3 months behind on rent. So when he got home from work, she confronted him. It was sadder than what I posted. He hadn't paid any insurance, utilities, rent, or any of their living expenses in months. He had lost his job months ago, and every day he would pretend to go to work. He would actually go to the mall and just chill there all day doing nothing and come back as if it was all normal. During their trip, he actually had a court date to face his theft charge, which he just skipped, so he's in even more trouble. Obviously, all of his credit cards were maxed and canceled or suspended. No one in the circle of friends noticed anything that would constitute as a red flag. Obviously, she ended things there. He moved back to his parents' place. I don't know to what extent, but they helped his now ex-girlfriend pay things off that she was technically on the hook for as well. Back rent, etc. We didn't really remain friends after that, merely acquaintances. I saw him a handful of times at social events, and I don't have many details, but he seems to have turned things around, built a life and family and a career. So, unlike addictions that have clear physical signs, gambling can be hidden for a long time from everyone, but can be just as destructive. Next story. I had a family member who lived in a resort area. As a bonus at work, the entire company went out to Vegas for a weekend. He got at the craps tables and went through all of his money, signed a couple of IOUs, then sold his wedding ring, his watch, and pretty much anything else he could find value on his person. Pretty sure he stole some stuff and sold it and continued to gamble. He didn't get on the plane to go home because he sold the ticket, lost his job, lost his house, and ended up homeless in Vegas. He continued doing odd jobs and gambling for months. Finally, his wife felt bad for their kids and went out and got him and dragged him to Florida to move in with her mother and got him into gambling rehab. One weekend, and he literally lost everything. Next story. UK. There was a radio program about gambling on the BBC, and a guy on it told his story. He was a non-gambler, living quite happily, and one day while watching the football at halftime, an advert came on for a free bet with a big betting company. He thought to himself, he'd set up an account and take the free bet offer for a bit of fun. Over time, from that bet, he went on to empty savings, max out credit cards, and ultimately lose his home and his marriage, all from a standing start and a free bet. The hook that gambling sites can have is dangerous, man. I've had my own little run-in with gambling, and thankfully I managed to quell the urge at a young age, but I also know that if I ever tried again, it might actually be a huge issue, so I stay away. But if you've ever wondered why casinos just send some people like $10 or $20 sometimes, it's because that is nothing compared to how much they'll make if someone actually comes in and spends it. Next story. Degenerate gambling runs in one of my friends' families. I remember multiple people trying to track him down in high school over a few $100. When his grandma died and they went through her assets, they found out she blew about $600,000 in her last few years playing penny slots. She lived in a retirement home where they would bus people to the casino daily. One of the crazier stories I remember from them is my buddy's 21st birthday. His dad took him to a casino. They walked in and the first thing his dad did was put $5,000 on 21 on the roulette wheel. He hit it. By the end of the night, his dad walked out down big, blew all $180,000 he won on that spin, and a bunch more money. He died with millions in tax debt. Next story. I was married for 16 years. She handled all the finances, bills, accounts, everything. I didn't question it much because honestly, I trusted her. I wasn't great with money. I made almost twice what she did. I even bought our house using my retirement savings. But somehow we were always broke. I'd check the checking account once in a while and nothing looked obviously wrong. It was just constantly empty. Like, no matter how much I worked, we were scraping by. There was a point where I was so stressed about money that I picked up a second job driving Uber after working 10-hour shifts as a restaurant manager. I was exhausted. I thought that was just what you do to keep things afloat. Then she met someone online and divorced me. After 16 years, just like that. While everything was falling apart, I started digging into the finances more than I had ever before. She had been taking cash advances out of our line of credit straight from the casino ATM over and over. $1,000 at a time, which added up to more than $42,000. I made $70,000 a year most of my life. It was like every discretionary dollar I ever had. And the worst part is, none of it ever came back. No winnings, no payments, Nothing. Just debt stacking up quietly in the background while I'm out working myself to death thinking we're just tight on money. To this day, I honestly think she left because it was about to hit the breaking point. Like she knew it was catching up and figured the divorce would dump it into the shared debt pile or get covered when the house was sold. I don't know. I just know I trusted someone completely and had no idea what was happening. So yeah, if you're married or sharing finances with someone, be careful of who you trust. Next story. I think the ones you see personally are always the worst. I've seen a friend run into family randomly at the casino just because addiction runs in their family. My friend had hit the ATM so much in Vegas, I remember she turned to me at one point with a panicked look because her card was declined at the ATM. She had spent it all. I myself had gone with a limited cash supply and refused to spend more. When we flew back, the only money we had between us was $10 cash I kept for emergencies. It was a very quiet trip home. She told me years later that she was still paying off that trip. I had a customer once tell me that there's a guy in our town that pays people to go gamble for him so he can cover more machines. That's a pretty extreme level. Okay, what's the point though of paying people to gamble for you? That doesn't make sense to me. I figure gambling addiction is about the dopamine of hitting it big, the big colorful lights and the sounds when the slot machine goes, ding, 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 you're the winner, But if someone else is getting all that and they just come back and tell you, you won, surely that's not even the same hit, right? Like this just doesn't even make sense. This is levels of gambling addiction I couldn't even fathom. Next story. I just cut ties with my best friend who's a gambling addict. We're in our 40s. He stole about $20,000 from his parents to gamble a couple of years ago. When his father found out, his father held him at gunpoint demanding the money. His father then took his own life in front of him. For a little while afterwards, he seemed to stop. Then I think denial about the event ended and he wound up gambling even more. We spoke every day, but he would always talk to me about gambling and how to get more money. The last time I saw him, he had lost about 40 pounds in 3 months, and he looked like an H addict. His house was deplorable. He'd stopped seeing his kids on the weekends. I told him I couldn't be there anymore for him if he was going to refuse help. I was the only support left in his life, but he was constantly begging me for money, then losing it, then telling me he was going to take his own life. I love him unconditionally, and I feel awful that I couldn't handle it anymore. I'm heartbroken and devastated. I feel like he's dead. My best friend doesn't exist anymore. Next story. I was a dealer/table game supervisor in AC and Las Vegas, and the amount of people I've seen blow through everything would boggle your minds. On more than one occasion, some of those people chose taking a header off the parking garage or taking their own lives in a stairwell rather than facing their families and telling them that they've lost everything. It's the industry's dirty little secret. Next story. Here's the thing about gambling addiction. You're not addicted to playing or to taking risks or to winning. You're addicted to losing. Addiction is not about reward. It's about acquiring habits so that doing the thing leads to doing the thing more. That can be behavior that doesn't even feel good or even feels terrible, so long as it leads you back to doing it more. And what is the thing you're doing that you keep doing and that ends up wiping you out? Losing. If you stopped while you were ahead, you wouldn't be a gambling addict. If you stopped when you'd lost a little bit of money but not lost at all, you wouldn't be a gambling addict. If you budgeted and played a lower stakes game so that you could play all day and not lose more than you can afford to lose, you wouldn't get wiped out. If you just wanted to take risks, you could do that on the stock market or the ski slopes. The gambling addict has a behavior pattern that observed from the outside looks like wanting to lose, like being compelled to keep playing until they've lost dramatically, catastrophically, like not ever being satisfied with anything other than losing. It's not that losing is rewarding. Addiction isn't about reward. It's about habit formation. And losing leads the incipient addict to go back to the tables, go back to the app, go back to the slot machine and try to win. But they're not really trying to win because it's gambling. There's no way that putting more effort into a slot machine can cause you to win more. OP wrote this pretty eloquently, but I completely disagree. I think that addiction, or at least I thought, was pretty proven to be because of actually, thinking you can win, wanting to win. What OP said sounds very, pseudoscience-y to me. Like when I was taking psychology, I learned about this thing called intermittent rewards and how that was the best way to train a certain behavior. It's not rewarding it every time, and it's not rewarding it never, but rewarding it sometimes actually yields the most consistent doing of the thing, if that makes sense. Basically, you get a dog to press a button, and then you give it a treat. Sometimes it will press the button more more than if you were to obviously never give it a treat, or if it were to press it every time and get a treat every time. I figured that's very similar to how addiction works in our brains. Well, that among a bunch of other things like your dopamine receptors, all the brain chemicals going on in there, because that plays a factor too. Your senses do just get dulled to excitement or just straight up dopamine over time, and then you need bigger and bigger hits to try and chase that high. It's very scientific, a lot of this. So I don't think what OP's saying here is accurate, but if I'm wrong, please correct me. I love learning about this stuff. And I'm more than happy to be wrong about things. Next story. Friend used to work at a casino in Las Vegas. He said one day a woman came in and gambled away about $30,000, which was her family's life savings. All their money. And also her daughter's college fund. A few hours later, my friend stumbles on the lady and her husband in the parking lot, and the husband is absolutely enraged. He's screaming at her, calling her every name in the book, saying he's taking the kids and leaving. She just started bawling and begging him to stop yelling at her and saying she's sorry. My friend had to run back inside and call security when the guy started punching and slapping her. When they arrived, though, he was already gone and the wife was unconscious. He had beaten and brutalized her so badly that her face was almost completely unrecognizable. My friend never found out if she lived or not, but he personally suspected she didn't. Look, it takes a lot for me to side with someone who gambled away their entire family's life savings, but hey man, you've done it. You have become the ultimate piece of crap in this story. Am I saying that she did anything, right? No. But that does not mean she deserved this kind of treatment at all. I don't really think anything does. Next story. Nowhere near as bad as some of the other stories here. I know a guy who works at a bookies. He had an accident and received £10,000 in compensation. That's probably the most money he's ever had in his bank account. We all thought he'd use it to learn to drive so he could take his kids on holiday more, something he'd always complained about. We found out last week that he spent half of it on their annual family holiday and gambled away the rest. £10,000 could have been absolutely life-changing for someone in his position. Instead of taking buses everywhere and relying on family members for transport, he could have had a car, taken his kids to their favorite beach whenever they wanted, and made countless memories. His wife wouldn't have had to walk to collect the kids or carry home heavy grocery bags either. It's such a missed opportunity. Next story. I worked at a casino, and a man, locally famous, had a bad beat on a huge split double-down nightmare where the dealer drew a 7-card 21. He gambled a lot, and I guess this was his final straw. He asked to self-exclude. I started the paperwork and alerted my casino manager. He left while I was on the phone and went home and took his own life by shooting himself in the head, leaving behind a pregnant wife and a 2-year-old son. I quit my job a couple of months later. Next story. I worked in convenience stores for 10 years. I would watch the same people spend hours going back and forth from the ATM to the lottery machine. Some would spend over 1,000 at a time. Genuinely concerning. More than once I remote shut down the machine to stop someone. If they really wanted more tickets, they at least had to go somewhere else. Occasionally they would get something off a ticket, but they were losing big time. Just very sad to watch people who clearly don't have enough to be doing this putting so much money in. Next story. I've heard of worse stories, but I've seen people get wrecked by gambling. I had a coworker who drained his savings, including his wedding fund for his upcoming wedding, playing fantasy football. Crap really hit the fan for him when he took out a personal loan to put the money back into the wedding fund. She found out about it, and needless to say, he didn't get married, and that money went away in the same way. Also, I grew up in a city next to a Native American casino. Lots of stories of people betting everything they have, including a few friends of mine. Next story. I live about an hour and a half from Atlantic City, New Jersey. This kid I used to know who was going to school locally where we live would never let anyone come hang out at his house, even though he was a nice kid and had a bunch of friends. Both of his parents were primary care physicians, also locally, and I assume as a husband and wife of doctors, they made decent money. Turns out the kid and his sister would get home from school every day, and around 5:30 when their parents got home, they would get in the car and drive down to AC, stay in their basically permanent room at a casino hotel, have dinner, and their parents would gamble for most of the night. The parents would sleep a couple hours, and in the morning, they would have breakfast, hop in the car to drive back to their house in our local town. Kids would get picked up from the bus, and the parents would go to their practice to work all day. End of the day, same routine. Every single day. Sometimes the kids would stay home on the weekends, but every other day it was the same routine. What I found out a couple of years years later is that the parents would either make or lose enough every night that their financial situation fluctuated enough week to week that they were able to just live in that casino hotel perpetually. They kept full sets of clothing and essentially for years didn't live at their local house in our town at all. Truly psychopathic and unmanageable way to live life, especially with 2 young high school kids. I lost touch, so this was just over 20 years ago. Next story. We used to occasionally take $20 to the quarter slots at a local casino. One night, a youngish lady was next to me on a machine. Her guy came up to her and asked for more cash because the ATM wouldn't give him more. Long story short, he admitted that he emptied their savings account. She started crying, saying that was their rent money, and he kept telling her that if she gave him just a bit more of what she had on her, he'd win it back. I cashed out and left. That was sobering. Next story. I went to high school with a girl who moved to Vegas when she graduated. She lived with an aunt and went to college there. She told me the story of her aunt's ex-husband. He ran a very successful home building company in the 90s, was making great money and owned a lot of property outside of Vegas. As the city was expanding, he was selling property to developers, then building homes for them. By the late 90s, he had sold most of his property and years of work ahead. He hired a manager and basically retired. At that point, this gentleman got bored. He started frequenting the local sports establishments, started doing bets on sporting events, lost a little, won a little, never anything big. This started him down a road he wasn't going to recover from. By 2003, he had lost over $3 million between sports, horses, and the floor games. Went from a retired guy with nothing much to do to a guy on the verge of losing his company, home, and family. He proceeded to lose all 3. The financial ruin eventually caused him to take his own life in 2005. Next story. As a broke university student, I worked at a local restaurant, and the manager barely spoke English. After working there very part-time for a couple of months, she called me into her office and was showing me the register receipts for the day, and was mad at me. I couldn't figure out why. A coworker said every purchase was being rung through twice. I said, I had nothing to do with that. Feel free to check the cameras. A week later, I go to work and the door was locked with a sign saying it was permanently closed. Turns out, manager lady was ringing everything in twice. Still not quite understanding the logic here, and she was taking all of the cash and gambling with it. Then apparently tried to blame my little 18-year-old butt when she realized she was in for it. Restaurant closed. No idea what happened with her, but I know she was charged. Next story. My mom did the books for a local mechanic for over 20 years. He was a great guy and would pay her a regular paycheck, plus work on our family's car for a huge discount. Anyway, his wife was online gambling, slots and blackjack behind his back for years. He gets a call while at work one day. It was the police telling him his wife had taken her own life. She left behind an apology letter explaining that all the money is gone. They don't have a penny to their names. She had gambled it all away and couldn't tell him. He ended up selling the shop and now works for the city rebuilding his life. Haven't seen him since the funeral, which was like 15 years ago at this point. Next story. I was in rehab with a compulsive gambler turned counselor and sponsored gambling addicts. And he told me one of his sponsees who was sober 10 years fell off and without so much detail made one large bet with his family savings and put it on one sports bet. Lost the bet and took his own life in the bathroom. He was married with children, and they had no idea about his past gambling addiction. Let this be a little reminder that sometimes you really have no way of knowing. I'm sure this guy's family felt guilty for a little bit, but they shouldn't, right? He was, by all means, recovered and just had the worst relapse imaginable. I feel terrible for his family. And I feel bad for him, too. That kind of poor decision-making and addiction, I don't fully consider just a choice. Next story. On the west coast of the US, donut shops are pretty much exclusively run by Cambodians with their iconic pink boxes. This is because of Ted Ngoy, a refugee from Pol Pot's reign of terror, who began running and then selling donut shops to other Cambodian refugees. After 10 years of being in the US, Ted has amassed over 60 donut shops and was a millionaire. Then he quite literally gambled it all away. He first began to borrow money which he couldn't repay, which destroyed his reputation in the Cambodian community. He then began to sell his shops outright to cover his debts. His wife would be forced to fly to Vegas and try and find him to drag him out of casinos. Next story. An old friend of mine was dating a guy for around 8 years. They started in high school, probably senior year. We live in a city with some excellent colleges, so they both went to university locally. Finally decided it was time to get married. The wedding was a month away. She had her dress and everything was set up. She had to go away for a weekend. Comes back and notices a bunch of money missing from her bank account. Contacts the bank. They have her fiancé on camera at the ATM withdrawing money without her permission. Apparently, he needed it for gambling because he spent all of his already. Wedding is off. Sells her dress on eBay, gives the ring back to his now ex-best friend because it turns out best friend is the one who paid for it. Of course, they/their family are out a ton of money because they canceled everything. The funny thing is, 3 to 4 years later, she ends up married with the best friend. They're still married years later with a beautiful son. I'm just trying to imagine fights between these two, and it's like, I can't believe you wasted all our money on that. Oh, well, at least I didn't spend the whole thing gambling. At least we still have some left in our bank account, huh? The dude absolutely has the best, well, it could be worse, argument you could imagine. Next story. Used to play a freemium mobile game that had a little VIP number banner for players who had bought stuff. Doing the math on the VIP levels, the whale in the server I was in had paid 80 or 90,000 or something equally ridiculous. He didn't have a job, was shuffling debt from credit card to credit card, and was possibly using social security benefits that were for his elderly dad to fuel his addiction. It was pathetic, and nobody liked him. And seeing how far this dude was willing to go in debt just to win an event in that game made me decide to quit cold turkey. I'd spent maybe a few hundred and felt bad every time. Next story. My grandparents bought a house in the early 60s for $10,000. When a dog racing track opened up near them, he would go to the bank and forge her name on mortgage paperwork, take the money to the dog track, and gamble it away. When they filed bankruptcy in 1987, they owed over $60,000 on the house. They ended up renting for the rest of their lives. After Grandma died, he cashed in all of his life insurance policies and gambled that money away. He would wash his clothes in plain water and dilute dollar store dish detergent to save money to gamble with. He sold most of his furniture as well. It was so bad that the local convenience store asked him which rolls of lottery tickets to order since he would buy a large part of them anyway. By the 15th of each month, he was broke again, waiting until his pension and social security check came. When he died, my parents ended up paying the funeral and cremation bill. His checking account was overdrawn and all of his credit cards maxed out. There was absolutely nothing of value left in the house. He had sold everything that anyone would buy. All that was left of an 89-year life fit in 4 trash bags that we set at the curb for the city sanitation department to pick up. Look, man, if you end up becoming the regular for lottery tickets, they ask you which to buy, it's time to take that as a sign. That's rough, buddy. Next story. I managed a few legal bookie shops in Ireland. I once gave a free promotional £20 bet to a customer I liked. He backed a 20-to-1 shot and won. He stood in the shop and gambled every penny, plus around £200 of his own. He pulled his last £5 out of his wallet, then decided not to gamble with it. Said he had to buy something on the way home. He called to the hardware store 3 doors down and bought 5 pounds of nylon rope. He went home and took his own life. This guy was the reason I left that job. I went to university and became an addiction therapist. Next story. Just repeating a story told by someone on a similar post that stuck with me. It was in a Vegas casino. There was a situation involving a threatening guy with a gun, and the police intervened to arrest him before he shot anyone. Police told everyone to get on the ground, and everyone went still and silent, except for one slot machine. There was a guy crouching in front of it, head down, but with one arm reaching up, blindly pressing its button to keep playing. Next story. Fred Goodwin is the CEO of the Royal Bank of Scotland. He decided to buy ABN AMRO for a massively inflated figure without doing due diligence on the bank. It's important to note that he did the same thing with NatWest, but got lucky because NatWest was a sound bank with brilliant people. ABN AMRO was a dumpster fire. Add subprime mortgages and CDOs into the mix, and you have the perfect storm. His arrogant gambling led to the collapse of the bank and resulted in a £50 billion taxpayer bailout, and he kept all his pension benefits whilst screwing up the UK economy for the next 14 years. Next story. Many moons ago, I used to work for a casino as security. One late night/early morning, I was guarding the side door, and my shift was about to be over. A gentleman walks up to me and begins talking to me.
Excuse me, sir.
Hello and good morning. How can I help you?
I'd like to talk to the owner of the casino.
Sorry, the owner?
Yes.
I don't have access to even try to find the owner's contact info, but how can I be of assistance?
I'd like to get my money back.
Come again?
See, I spent my mortgage and vehicle payment checks while in this fine establishment, and I was curious to see if I could talk to the owner to see if he would be willing to let me have my money back.
Wait, so you want to talk to the owner of a casino to see if he would be willing to give your money back to you that you gambled away?
Yes.
As I stated before, I don't have access to that kind of information. Nor do I think that they would willingly give the money back that you gave to them.
My wife is going to end me if I don't get this money back.
Sir, I honestly don't know what to tell you. I slide him a Gambling Anonymous card.
What's this for?
I believe you may have a problem, sir.
I don't have a problem. I just want my hard-earned money back.
Sir, I highly suggest that you call the number on the card and take care of yourself. After this, he walked to his truck with his head hanging low. I really felt sorry for this guy, but he was in there for hours. He blew 6 figures in a single work shift. Next story. 2 that I remember. One is kind of humorous in its stupidity. The other is just sad. I was on a first date with a guy. He enjoyed gambling, but it was just entertainment for him, not a means of making money. So we went out for dinner and to one of the nearby casinos afterward. He brought a couple $100, and when it was gone, it was gone. It was a Friday, so at the time it was a $20 buy-in at the blackjack table. He played for a while, I watched, and we both drank. Eventually, a guy came over with a girl that he was very obviously trying to impress. He was young and cocky. It was very quickly obvious he had no idea how to play blackjack to maximize his chances of winning. He blew through some money quickly. Some of the other guys at the table and even the dealer tried to give him some pointers, but he was having none of it because he knew better. So, in a bit over an hour, he blew through about $2,000. So this was about 25 years ago. That's like $3,500 now. And then finally walked away. He could have used that $2,000 to impress that girl in so many better ways. The second, I'll be a bit light on details because if I recall correctly, it did make the news. A vendor I worked with committed large-scale postal fraud, like well into the 6 figures. And with the money he got from defrauding the USPS, he gambled and lost nearly all of it. Let me tell you, the USPS does not screw around when it comes to prosecuting crimes involving the postal system. Do your fraud somewhere else. As far as I know, this guy's still in federal prison 20 years later. No idea when he's getting out. Next story. I had a manager while I was working at Walmart. She was super loved by my shift. We worked overnights. She was fair, worked right in the trenches with the rest of us, helping us stock shelves when she could. Sometimes there would be free food, and she wouldn't let day shift give us their leftovers. She would fight for us to get our own free food. She got fired for embezzling money to fund her gambling habits. Fast forward a year or so, and I got the job at a nearby casino. I ran into her, and she was playing the slot machine. She looked like a zombie. Not the bright-eyed manager I knew. She was there from at least 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. Almost looked like she was on autopilot. Next story. Goddamn, reading these stories is heartbreaking. I have family and friends that are sports gambling addicts, and not to the levels described here. Yet. I've enjoyed throwing a few bucks, anywhere between 5 and 100 in total on a single game, on games for the last 15 to 20 years. But the way sports gambling has taken off since legalization in North America is insane. I hold the opinion that it should be kept legal. I mean, that genie isn't going back into the bottle, but end all advertising and promotion. Make it like cigarettes. It's just too prevalent, and there are too many at-risk people. Next story. My wife's friend was in med school in Vegas, UNLV. Never having gambled before, he walked into a casino with $60 and hit it big for $6,000 on a slot machine. He proceeded to gamble away over $180,000 of his student loans over the next 2 years playing high-limit slots. He told me this story smiling, saying, "It's okay, Biden or Trump will forgive my loan." He ended up having to finish med school in Mexico and doesn't practice medicine. Next story. A good portion of my childhood was spent on a bench outside of gambling floors in the casino, waiting up all hours of the night with no idea of when my parents were going to come out. This started around age 5 to 6-ish, and went on till I was maybe 9. They would just leave me in the house after that, more than a night at a time. My sisters are 6 and 7-ish years older than me. I eventually stopped begging my mom to not leave me and stopped making sure she hugged and kissed me goodbye because my sisters made fun of me for it. When I was about 15, my dad handed me a letter from a lawyer representing the casino about money he owed and had me call to set up a repayment plan. That he never repaid. My parents eventually lost the business that I also spent a good portion of my childhood in, and the last home my parents had their name on. At 40 years old now and a mother to an 11-year-old, I am constantly reminded how my basic needs as a child weren't met, that my mother failed as a mother because she had no backbone and never stood up for her kids. My parents still frequent the casino, and my mom and one of my sisters think I'm mean for not allowing my daughter to go to any casino family events, that I'm depriving her of something. My dad will not sleep ever, and I don't know what he does at the casino, but my mom goes with him. They aren't alcoholics and don't do drugs. They're Asian. I'm sure it's not the absolute worst, but it's the story I know the best, and I personally haven't heard anything worse firsthand. My parents gambling, or my dad's gambling, and my mother's enabling or lack of ability to just stand up, or maybe she's a gambler too, created a child who learned early that their parents would never be there for them, and created decades of me chasing emotionally avoidant men that I tried so hard to be good enough for. Imagine choosing the casino over your child who wants to be with you so badly and also needs sleep. The anxiety and the weight and learning my basic growing child needs weren't important, and then choosing the casino for the next several decades. I hate the casino, and I think I might hate my parents, but have guilt about it. My dad has never discussed any of it with me. I've mentioned it to my mom recently, and she was like, "Well, parents need to have fun too." To which I snap back, "Fun goes on the back burner when you have children to take care of." And she was like, "Well, you weren't alone. You had your sisters." My sisters, who were also children, abused me, took their anger at our parents out on me. They would emotionally torment me, to which my sister said, "Oh, we were just being kids." And I'm like, yeah, no, parents are supposed to be there to stop you from behaving like that and teaching you better. I could have turned out a lot more messed up. If you met me, you'd think I'm a nice, well-rounded, attractive person, which I am, but it's exhausting masking all these years, pretending life is great since I was a kid, but it really sucks, looking for love in the wrong places, etc., etc. Every gambling addict story is bad. It sucks up more than one person usually, and it's more than just a gambling addiction problem. What came first, the addict or something else? That's the microscopic version of the story. Oh yeah, and sometimes my mom tries to give me parenting advice. Pretty funny, right? Sometimes she says sorry, but doesn't seem to mean it. She has no idea the magnitude of damages she's done. She just didn't know what happened to me. Next story. I come from a city that used to have one of the highest densities of gambling halls in the country before COVID. There are stricter laws now, but even today there are still an unbelievable number of them. Because of that, and because they somehow all managed to survive, I've known a lot of people with gambling addictions. If there are different levels of gambling addiction, I'm pretty sure I've seen almost all of them. It starts with what many people consider the harmless stuff. People gambling away their own money, then family money, until there's nothing left halfway through the month. Unfortunately, this was also the case in my own family. My father was addicted to gambling when I was a child. I didn't fully understand it back then, but I remember that we never had money. When there were school trips or activities, I usually couldn't go because there simply wasn't any money. My father would say he was going to the basement, but he was actually going to a gambling hall. Eventually, my mother threatened to leave him and take me and my siblings with her if he didn't stop. He did stop, and thankfully he has stayed away from gambling ever since. Later in life, I witnessed two of the worst stories I've ever heard, both from the same family. Almost the entire family was addicted to gambling. The father, the mother, and the sister. The only one who wasn't was my friend, the daughter. At some point, the family members barely had contact with each other anymore except through her. One day, I was at her place just hanging out when the doorbell rang. Her father stood outside, shaking, pale, completely distressed. He said he needed money. When she asked what for, he avoided the question at first. The situation escalated. He became aggressive, and that's when it came out. He needed the money to gamble. She refused, and then he said something I will never forget. If she didn't give him money to gamble, he would drive his car into the next tree. He behaved exactly like someone in drug withdrawal, scratching himself, trembling, desperate. Except it wasn't drugs. It was gambling. What do you do in a situation like that? She gave him the money. I mean, I don't blame her. it was still her father. And before the addiction, he had been a good one. Unfortunately, this became a pattern. Later, her sister learned that threatening taking her own life had worked. During another argument about money, the sister ran onto the balcony of their fourth-floor apartment and threatened to jump if she wasn't given money. She was already halfway over the railing. That was the moment my friend finally cut contact with them, but it didn't end there. The last thing she heard about her sister was that she slipped into escort work. Not in the stereotypical way people imagine, but because someone had found out she was addicted to gambling and offered to pay for her time at the casino if she agreed to sleep with him and his friends. The worst part? She had children. One day, my friend got a call from one of the kids. The sister had 3 small children, around 8, 6, and 3 or 4 years old. The child said their mother hadn't come home for 3 days. She had left them alone with some groceries and then disappeared. After that, the children were taken to CPS. And the last that anyone heard was that the sister had completely fallen into her work. All of this because of gambling. And then there are the classic cases. People losing their jobs because they're constantly gambling, getting unemployment benefits, and losing all of that within a day or two at a casino or gambling hall. I know someone who received his benefits and had nothing left after 2 days. What makes it even scarier now is how easy it has become. Sports betting, online casinos, gambling apps, it's everywhere, and it's accessible 24/7. Honestly, I'm grateful that I've never felt the urge to gamble myself. Seeing all of this up close has made me terrified of how fast you can slide into it. These are some of the worst stories I've ever encountered. Having your own family threaten to take their own lives to extort you for money? This person deserves the easiest life imaginable after this. I'm not saying it's the worst thing you can experience, but it's not a competition. It's pretty bad, man. Absolutely exhausting to be in that situation. Mentally, emotionally, just everything. I hope she's doing better now. Next story. I'm an officer in the Dutch Army, Netherlands. The story of my deputy sergeant about his first marriage always stuck with me. He was out on a tour in Afghanistan. He initially would be deployed there for 5 months, but he ended up being close to 10 months in Afghanistan in that rotation. He found out his fiancée cheated on him with multiple guys and got pregnant from one of them. He had to carry that burden for a few months while being deployed. But it got worse. When his tour was finished, before he went to his home, he was sent to a hold-up area in Greece 2 to 3 days to blow off some steam. Normal after a long tour in my country. He found out in Greece that he had no home to come home to. His fiancée had lost all their savings gambling, sold their house, lost that as well gambling, and also managed to get access to his bank accounts and lost all of his money while gambling. I respect the guy a lot for pushing through and not taking his own life. Man's a warrior. Next story. I hate seeing this thread. Honestly, I'm in the middle of a gambling addiction myself. Burned through my savings, maxed out cards, likely ruined my marriage, etc., all in the course of 2 to 3 years. I don't even know exactly how much I've lost last year, but I know it's in excess of $250,000. Earlier in life, I beat a polysubstance addiction, including ice, and I honestly think gambling is worse. At least with drugs, you realize you're spiraling and ruining your life. With gambling, there's an illusion that one hot run can erase most of the damage that you've done. OP, I obviously can't talk to you directly, so I just hope you're doing better right now. Recognizing that this is a problem and still struggling to do something about it is just a very real reality about addictions. But you kicked a pretty hard one already, so I believe in you. Keep up the fight. Next story. One of my family members, for me, had a good job that he held for over 25 years and is the only field he trained in. And it's a small circle. They all talk. Ended up with us all finding out he was a gambling addict when he was arrested at work for stealing around $50,000 and ended up avoiding jail by the skin of his teeth, and a lot of support and input from myself and other family. Nearly ruined his marriage and lost access to his less than 12-month-old child. Had 0 transferable skills to move to a different field. It was honestly scary how quickly his life imploded. At one point, I thought we were going to lose him completely. Gambling ain't a joke. I drive past the bookies and hope I don't see him walking out. I hold my breath when I get a message from his wife, praying it isn't a "found some betting slips, I'm done with him" message. The impact isn't just felt by the gambler, but everyone in their orbit. And sadly, he still can't see that others have been hurt by his choices/addiction, which makes me think he will relapse. And I don't know if I have the strength to help him pull back again. Next story. Friend of mine inherited a 6-figure sum, decided he was now a poker professional, started deliberately calling when he knew he was beat so he could check his reads, thought he was accumulating some esoteric knowledge of poker, but instead just systematically blew through the whole lot in about 18 months. Another guy I knew inherited around $125,000. Thought he had a foolproof system on football spread betting. Got the $125,000 out as a banker's check, deposited it with an independent bookmaker, lost the lot when a load of late goals went in. He was doubling up and selling goal minutes for the people who would get what that means, canceled the check and went on the run. But the worst one for me was a guy who, when I was working within a betting shop, turned £20 into £1,000. Well, almost. £999.40. It was on one of the roulette machines. I was begging him to stop, but he just kept telling me, I need to win the grand. I told him, dude, I'll give you 60 cents out of the till. Just leave it. But he suddenly became fixated on winning the grand legit, as if it were some sort of sporting achievement or personal best. 20 minutes later, he's felted the whole lot, and then spent the next hour dropping another £200 chasing it, smashed the machine with a chair, and stormed out. I think about that last guy quite often. It was a momentary peak in a destructive, irrational obsession, which I've rarely seen to such an extent before or since. All of that for 60 cents. Okay, well, what is it when it's pounds? It's pence, right? Why did I say cents? Anyway, the point is, small amount of money. But OP's right, it is the irrational, completely ununderstandable, incomprehensible side of gambling. It doesn't make any sense. You can't work harder and win roulette more. There is no skill to be expressed. If you win almost $1,000 or pounds or whatever, just take it. It would be so easy to just take it and walk away, but I mean, that's the thing, right? It's not easy. Otherwise, casinos simply couldn't exist. Next story. It's not heard, but watched. I used to be a gaming bartender at a little dive bar in Vegas. I worked graves. Got into my shift, and this dude wearing black and a red vest had apparently been there for a while already, not even really drinking. He was throwing money into the machines. He stayed and gambled my entire shift, only to get up periodically to go to the ATM and pull out more money. Eventually, he couldn't pull any more money out of the ATM because I think he maxed out his withdrawals for the day. He had a public meltdown that he couldn't pull out anymore and stormed out of the bar. I looked at how much he gambled and was shook when I saw it was $27,000. Next story. I went gambling with a friend at a casino once. We rode in separate vehicles. I was up $600 after 2 hours there and decided to call it a night around midnight, and he decided to stay. Fast forward the next morning. At 8 a.m., he calls me to tell me that he was leaving the casino and he had lost everything. I replied with, "Oh, that sucks." And he responded with, "No, I lost everything. I withdrew my life savings." Afterwards, he had to call one of those gambling hotlines to ban himself from being able to gamble. Luckily, he was in his early 20s, so I'm not sure what his life savings amounted to. Also, I see him from time to time, and he tries to get me to go out of state to gamble since he's only banned from the state we live in. I always decline the invite since I'm not that big of a gambler, and would never drive out of the state just to do that. Next story. I used to do security at a casino in New Jersey. Late night high roller poker room. Asian man in his 50s. We knew him as a regular, and over the course of a few months he went from being impeccably dressed with a group of friends to showing up disheveled, chain-smoking, and snapping at anyone near him. One night he's sitting at the table and he's had a bad night. In the hour I was watching that area, he had to be down at least 10 grand. Dealer accidentally deals in a girl sitting behind a guy and calls the hand dead. A misdeal. I mean, it happens. Our degenerate gambler turns over pocket aces, screams like a banshee, and flings his drink in the dealer's face. Before I or any security could take a step towards the table, he has flung himself over and tackled the dealer, biting him and hitting him. We broke it up, and he went to jail and was banned. But I personally haven't gambled once since that night. Also, a lot of elderly people just crap themselves and pee themselves at the slots and go about their day. It's wild. Don't gamble. Hey everybody, time for a narrator story. I would consider myself to have a pretty addictive personality. I know this about myself now and can regulate it, but when I was younger, I couldn't. So when I was in high school, like 16 or so, I was pretty decently into Counter-Strike, specifically the whole market side of it, the getting items. If you don't know, there are weapon skins in Counter-Strike that are worth just stupid amounts of money. I didn't have any of the stupid amounts of money, but let's just say I had like $1,000 or so in there. Also at that time, gambling was really big in the scene because, hey, you can't really regulate it. So there's a lot of underage, uninformed gambling happening. Oh boy, surely this is only good. No, it's not. Hard cut to me at the age of 16, waiting to be picked up by my parents after school, on my phone, shaking as I am gambling like $30 or whatever on a CSGO something website. I don't know what it was, but I was like sweating. I could feel an elevated heart rate. It was bad, dude. Like, thinking about it freaks me out. And then this all culminated when I was like 18. I turned 18. I was like, I can gamble legally now. Oh boy. So I went on to more CSGO gambling websites. Thank God it wasn't actual money, but I tossed in like 50 or $100 or something, and I played blackjack all the way up to 250 or 300-ish. From there, you would say, well, Mr. Narrator, just take it out. You're so up. That's not how gambling works, everybody. It simply isn't, especially not when you're, I don't know, me, I guess. So, I went to the most skill-intensive gambling game out there, coin flips. It was literal coin flips. You'd put your items in this website against someone with relatively the same value, and it would flip a damn coin. What's wrong with me? So we're working literal 50-50 shots, and I don't know how. Divine intervention. I got from 350 to 1,000. I'm 18 years old. This is crazy. This is amazing. But as gambling goes, 1,000 really quickly becomes 700, which then really quickly becomes 200 as you try to double up your bet to make back what you lost. And 200 really quickly becomes 0. Now, thankfully, I didn't put any more money in. I capped it at whatever I put in at the beginning, which is how you should do it, to be fair. And hopefully got it all out of my system because I haven't gambled since. But observing that kind of behavior early and losing not too much money is actually kind of good in a way. Hesitate to say that because, well, gambling underage is illegal. But it really helped me realize who I am as a person, what's going on in that brain of mine, and what I should not do. Anyway, now I just play a bunch of TCGs and open booster packs, and that's a whole lot better. Well, anyway, last story for today. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I will see you in the next one.